Hey everyone, Michael Kerr here from Humor at Work, and I'm very excited to have a guest author with me today here again, Eric Stutzman, who is the managing director of and I want to get this right, Eric, the Achieve Center for Leadership and Workplace Performance.
You got it.
It's a pretty impressive title.
It's a long one.
It's a long one, but it's a good one. It's a very good one. And Eric is one of the authors, one of the 4 authors who wrote a fabulous book that I highly recommend called, and I've got it right here, The Culture Question, How to Create a Workplace Where People Like to Work, because it's kind of important to like going to your workplace.
Yeah, we think so.
yeah. That comes through in the book. So Eric, let's dive right in on that notion. Why, obviously your book is about workplace culture.
Yeah.
Can you give your Reader's Digest version of how you define culture and why you think culture is so important?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Michael. For us, the simplest way we've come to describe it is essentially the way things get done around here, or the way things are around here. It's another way to think about it is relational environment. What's the relational environment like in an office? And there's all kinds of markers that go along in that relational environment, like what are our approaches to dealing with conflict? How is our leadership focused? There's, what do you see on the walls? There's all kinds of markers that help you think about culture, but really it's how are we relating? What are the unspoken rules and the ways we get along as a group of people?
Right. And I love what you just said there, because I talk about that as well, the unwritten rules, right? There are so many unwritten rules in a workplace, and those are great conversations I find to have with your teams, with leadership teams, to sort of excavate what's really going on in your workplace, right? So Eric, why do you think culture is so critically important?
Right. Well, for me, if culture is essentially that sea in which we operate, the relational environment, it has to be good. If it's not, it doesn't have to be, but if it isn't good, I don't want to stay there very long because I feel it, right? And so for me, getting your culture right is about being able to succeed with your organizational objectives, whatever they might be, service delivery, selling product, whatever. If you don't have your culture right, over time, you're lost, right? We have to, well, another way to think about it is this: why would you want to go to work and suffer, right? You got to get right. Why would you want that? Nobody wants that. And yet, from all the statistics, it appears that a lot of people are doing that. And I think that's a shame. There's plenty of other ways to suffer in life. We don't need to suffer at work. Let's get our culture right. Let's do work we're proud of, work that makes a difference in a relationship, in a relational environment that stimulates us and makes us grow as people. Why wouldn't we want that?
Right on. Have you ever worked in a soul-sucking, fun-sucking culture?
Oh yeah, for sure. I counted up the other day. I've had at least 20 different jobs before I came to work here 11 years ago. And, in that range of places, there's a range, right?
Wow.
And it doesn't necessarily go with an office environment is good and construction is bad. I've worked on landscaping crews in a construction environment where it was great. Like I worked on a farm. It was amazing. Great culture, great work. It was hard work. And I worked in an office environment where I just felt like, are you kidding me? This is how we deal with conflict? Are you kidding me? This is what leadership is like. So it doesn't really have to do with the type of work I found. It has much more to do with how leaders are leading, what our unspoken rules are for getting along or not, and some intentional focus on who do we want to be and how can we be that.
Right. And that's a really good point that you just made. I have a really good friend, and he talks about how still one of his best jobs in his whole life, he was a young guy at the time, early 20s, late teens, but he worked in the Winnipeg, where you are, in the sewer department there. Right. Not exactly a glamorous job,
No.
a tough job, a brutal environment, but he said what made that job was the camaraderie, the fun that they had as a team. Everybody got along so well. So just the culture in that team made all the difference in the world, even though a lot of people would think of that as a miserable job, right?
Yeah.
So Eric, why do you think there's this knowing doing gap that seems to exist there, right? Everybody seems to know that culture is important. important. As I often joke, there's no CEO, there's no leader who's going to get up in front of his people and say, culture, that's important.
Yeah.
You people, you're sort of 9 on the priority list. There's a difference between knowing culture matters and actually doing something about it in most organizations. What do you think causes that gap?
I think there's 2 things that are happening that come immediately to mind. I think a leader gets into their role and they immediately begin to focus on operational things. Oh, well, we've got to produce this many widgets, or we've got to deliver this much service, or we've got to do, whatever we've got to do. And that's measurable. And usually somebody's promoted into leadership through the ranks, or that often happens in organizations. So they're a really good nurse, they're a really good mechanic, or whatever they are, and they move into a leadership position, but they're good at the production side of things, the operational side of things. And so while they understand that they want a good relational environment, people play to their strengths. And so I think a lot of people that get put into those leadership roles are playing to their strengths in operations and not their strengths, or maybe they haven't developed strengths yet in people leadership and in culture.
Right.
And I'm sure you think about this a lot. Like people don't train managers in how to deal with people. That's not their first thought. Their first thought is, how are we going to meet the strategic objectives, or how are we going to get our shifts filled, or how? It's all operational rather than relational.
Right, and I'm sure you find this too. And exactly to your point, very often people get promoted into management leadership positions because they were good at the job they were doing,
Precisely.
But that doesn't necessarily make them a good manager, because the skill set is very, very different. You could have been a phenomenal engineer.
Yes.
In terms of your knowledge, your skills, your technical expertise. Now you're leading a group of people and you've never been trained, or you don't get the proper training and support and coaching and mentoring to lead those people.
You're exactly right. Exactly.